Welcome into another episode of Making It Rain with yours truly, Landon McMahon and Joseph Batterino. What's going on, my man, Joe?
No, not much. It's a nice Saturday evening out here in Western New York. I don't know about where you are in Texas, but it was a nice day today.
Yeah, it was a recovery day. I went out for the Kings game last night and threw a few back. So today was a nice little relax, go hit the gym and just enjoy some Seinfeld on Netflix. So that was pretty good.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's the day. That was today's first day, right? Was it today or yesterday? The debut
of Seinfeld back on Netflix.
Seinfeld.
I think it was yesterday or the day before. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, that's awesome, though. That's awesome.
Yeah, one of my favorite shows.
Good, because there's people that I don't know how, but there's people that don't like the show, and I don't get it.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's like I think a lot of people, it's just similar like to The Office. Like a lot of people think it's absolutely hilarious, or they don't understand the comedy. It's like there's really no in between.
Yeah, and I think it's hilarious. So
yeah. I watch it all the time. So speaking of watching it all the time, back-to-back Kings games. Got a lot of hockey pumping through the blood in the preseason. Got a win and a loss. Split the games with Vegas there. But I thought we looked good in both games. As Russell, our colleague, pointed out on Twitter, that the Corsi 4, even in the second game, was over 60%. So we were pushing the puck in the offensive zone, and we just missed our opportunities to score goals. And so both games, the offense was flying around the ice. What did you see from I know you just watched the first game, but what did you see, and what kind of stood out to you?
So yeah, I did not catch last night's game, but doing some of the look afterwards. Yeah. And to Russell's point, the Kings dominated the game 5-on-5, even when adjusted for score and venue. It was dominant performance 5-on-5. Every line looked strong again from the numbers standpoint. So, but from the first game on Thursday night, boy, was I really, really impressed with, and I alluded to it in the takeaways article, the Danault Iafallo. I'm loving this combination. That duo is looking really, really good to me, and I kind of hope that they start the season together. And I want to see Tkachev with those two, but I don't even know if it matters. He's been looking so good. His skating is great, which I mean I kind of expected, but to see his vision in his passing, he's playing the left circle on the power play, and his distribution's incredible. He is just feeding guys and finding open lanes and finding seams. It's great to see, and he could be a weapon that this team has needed for a while from a playmaking standpoint on the power play. So it's hard not to be excited about Tkachev. And I'll say I think Quinton Byfield is like game by game, shift by shift, period by period, you're starting to see him kind of assert himself just a little bit more. And I know we'll get to it, but they had their first round of guys that the roster got trimmed a bit, and he's still sticking around for a little bit longer. So we'll see how the rest of camp goes. But he's another one that I thought little by little is improving from where he was, say, at the start of the summer.
Yeah, I mean, good points there. And I really think that the Kemp on that Danault line, it really allows, Danault's not slow of foot by any means. So it allows them to both get their speed going in the right direction. You saw Kemp with Danault on the penalty kill in that game. Like they're the first ones out. And so utilizing that speed in that way too. So it's definitely an interesting line. And I know a lot of people are down on Kemp because of his inconsistencies, but Danault's one of the most consistent players on the ice. And so maybe that will, steadfast his game there. And if you, Vlad, man, he's got more sauce than Italian mom spaghetti. I tell you that, because Jesus, man, like that, he just threads that puck in between so many people, and just right on the tapes. He almost got a goal last night. He's got 3 assists in 3 games, and it's just his view and his skill set, chipping the puck off the boards to get it up to Velarde for that Elias Anderson goal. Just outstanding so far with him. And, you might not have too much longer before you can get him on the cheap for the Calder race if you were a betting person. So he's looked excellent.
I want to ask you, because and maybe I'm one of the guys that's I don't know if I would say I'm down on Kempe, or I'm just I want to see it at this point, and we've given him a leash. The Kings have given him a leash here, and it just hasn't quite happened. Because the one thing that I would say maybe was missing a little bit, as well as I think the Danault, Iafallo, and Kempe line played, there's not that pure offensive creativity, that playmaker, that natural playmaker on the line. I mean, Iafallo and Danault are so good at both ends of the ice, offensively, defensively, through the neutral zone. And Kempe is very north-south, great wheels, but I don't sense a great deal of creativity on that line. And I wonder if there's going to be times where they go stale offensively, hypothetically, if that line were to stay together, to where that's where I would love to see Tkachev play with Iafallo and Danault, just to add that extra offensive jolt to that line. To then they're going to be unbelievably responsible on both ends of the ice on the defensive side. But now you've got a guy in Tkachev who can also set up and be a creative playmaker and force in the offensive zone that I just don't know if Kempe can be that guy. So I'm curious. I know you probably like maybe Kempe or maybe trust him a little bit more than I do, but your thoughts on kind of, that's how I see that line. And I kind of would like to see Tkachev get a shot there with an extended look with Danault and Iafallo.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, you might see that after 10 games, but this is what I like to hear from both Kempe and Iafallo. Kempe last year worked a lot on his shot, his offensive game to score more goals, had, I believe, 14 goals last year, streaky goal scorer. And then, I think Danault will make him more consistent with that, his being the primary assist person. And Iafallo said that's the only thing he really worked on his game all summer was his shot, his flexing the stick and getting the quick shot within deep. And it's just something that they both have been working on later on in their game. And I think that that line is going to be all around good at almost everything. Yep. Right. And you're not going to have an elite presence, maybe only on defense, because Danault and Iafallo are good defensively, and speed probably on that line. But all the offensive skills are going to be in, just kind of all around. Good shooters, good passers, good creativity, but not excellent in any of those. But the fact that they're creating a lot of Corsi 4 on that line because of their defensive abilities, I bet you they're going to see a lot more chances to put pucks in the net. I really like that line so far. And I really like Tkachev with Vilardi, because Vilardi had parts of his season where he was super stale in his offense, and they want to see him shoot more. He's got a heavy shot. And so having an assist man and a creative guy on his line, and Vilardi's underrated creativity. There was a lot of passes behind his back, through his legs last year, finding people. And, it's something that I think is going to be very underrated, having his creativity and his hockey sense. With Vlad's hockey sense, is going to be a good line for a third line. And I think if you balance it out, you're going to see more consistent waves of attack, just like we saw in that game. I mean, you even saw it from Byfield and Kupari in that game. It was just wave after wave of relentless Corsi 4. And I think having a more balanced line on on the second and third pair, or the second and third pairing or lines, is going to be beneficial for the Kings. Just kind of have consistent waves. Like, it's not like, okay, this is our offensive line, and if that line has a bad night, then we have no offense. It just seems like they're balancing the lines pretty well.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that if they do decide to go this route and have Kempe start off with Danault and Iafallo, and it's Tkachev, because it's hard to argue what we've seen from Tkachev playing with Vilardi and Elias Anderson too. So it's again, we've talked about kind of a lot of bodies. It's a good problem to have, but it's also nice to see that. Because I've been very clear that I've had some questions about Iafallo, and is he going to be able to produce enough? And I still think I have the question, but I think he's looked great so far in camp. So I'm very, very happy with that. So there's definitely a lot of positives to come out of the first couple of games here early.
Yeah, I've liked his demeanor in camp as well, and some of the interviews you listen to, like I referenced on the last pod, him wanting the Kings to step on people's throats and put games away and do all that kind of stuff. It seemed like his mind has solely been on the offensive part of his game this offseason, and hopefully that comes out, because, like we've mentioned with a lot of the guys trying to earn roster spots, you're looking at, I need to do whatever I can to get on the ice, right? You look at Kapari played wing and he played really well with Byfield. Well, Iafallo's earned his ice time. So now, like, what part of your game are you really going to put yourself, him knowing that we have all these prospects coming up to keep his job, right? He's still in his 20s. Like, he's going to want to be a first or second liner, earn those minutes and earn the money that we're paying him. Like, these are all pro athletes. They got pride and everything like that. They don't want to be taken off the top line if they don't have to. And, you know, just like Brown said last year about the prospects, he said, like, yeah, I know we have a lot of good prospects, but come and take my job. I dare you. Like I've been in the league for a long time. I've established myself, you know, like it's your opportunity. It's not mine. I've earned my respect with this roster and you need to come take it. And I think that's what Iafallo is doing too.
Yeah. And like I said, he's looked great so far. And it's, I love the duo. Him and Danault together has been great. So whoever they end up pairing with them, I think it's going to be seamless.
Yeah, it's been nice, and you know we've seen a little bit of bouncing around the lines in the first one. You know, a lot of us thought that Samuel Fagemo might have a chance to crack the roster with him playing first line minutes and how well he played in the rookie tournament or the rookie face-off. You know, he got sent down today, and we'll talk about that later with the rain construction. But it looks like the lines are starting to settle in. We got 3 preseason games left. The next one's on Tuesday, and I think they're going to let these lines roll pretty much until, you know, game 10 and then see how they're performing just like last year and see what, you know, if there's any tweaks that need to be made. But, you know, you best believe that, you know, switching, Velarde's played with Kemp before. So if Vlad's playing way better than Kemp,
sure,
like switching one guy and keeping the Danault Iafallo pair together, like that's what we talked about. You don't need to find a line that works. You need to find a pair and a plug, right? So it's going to be something.
And even if Velarde and Anderson are that pair and than Kempe. But man, as we talk about this, we haven't even mentioned the likes of, you know, Trevor Moore, Andreas Athanasiou, who are probably guys that they're supposed to be regulars. You know, these aren't necessarily extra forwards. These are regulars. So then those are your wings in theory. Then on that fourth line, and then you've got a trio of, you know, is Wagner around? Is Lemieux around? Who's the center? Is Byfield staying as fourth line center? Is it Blake Lizotte? You know, so there's still a lot of juggling here to be done. And that's not to say that anybody that you know has been sent to the Ontario camp doesn't mean that they can't come back. It doesn't mean that they still can't make the opening night roster. So there's still a lot to be sorted out here. But we got a little bit of a hint, I guess you could say, with some of the trims today.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You look at, you know, Trevor Moore was the first line center for the USA team in the World Cup, played really well. You have an ex-30 goal scorer and Athanasiou, both playing on the fourth line. Like, we better have a lot better numbers 5-on-5 this year if you're having those types of players on the fourth line. And it just goes to show, like, how thin we were in the last couple seasons, and now it's a good problem to have. You know, you can have Lemieux play a game here or there against maybe bigger opponents, you know, to add some size. You know, you could add, if Athanasiou and Wagner are essentially the same person despite the goal scoring. So, you know, if they don't trade one away, then, you know, you can give people nights off with, like, they have similar abilities. You know, he's a typical fourth line grinder with excellent speed. So, you know, it looks good. And like you said, you know, and then it allows most of the people that we thought might crack the roster in our, you know, 10 thoughts about the season have already been sent down besides Byfield, but they all played well. I thought Fagemo played well. I thought Kupari played well, and Kaliev had a goal. So, you know, it's not like they're far off, like you said.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it's hard, I guess. You're in the off season in the summer, and then you get the rookie camp and the development camp. And so you start to get real fired up about, you know, these prospects, and you're trying to find holes on the roster. And, you know, then you have Fagemo go out and score the great goal he did in the Kings versus Kings game. And there's a lot of buzz around him. You know, he's playing on the top line and so there's all this stuff going on. And then, so here we are, we get to Sunday. And again, I obviously this nothing is like set in stone, but Fagemo, he's going to be in Ontario camp tomorrow. Kaliev going to be in Ontario camp tomorrow. So, but you know, it's it's okay. It is what it is. I mean, I know I've been talking about how I really want to see somebody inject something into that top six. Um, so we'll still see how it shakes out, but um, it's not a bad thing that they have this, but at some point, and I know, we've talked about it on this pod, and I think the last time we got together with Scott too, it's like at some point, you have to start to let's go here with these guys. And, that's the one thing is you kind of have maybe some veterans that could be blocking them, but at some point you got to see what you got and you got to let them run. And we'll see when that time comes.
Yeah, we'll see who gets through the old waivers there and everything like that. But I also think that, this could be a good thing, right? I mean, now they can find trade partners for whoever they feel is expendable. If they don't already get picked up through waivers, and then when those players are playing well in the A, you could bring them up. I fully believe our team is going to look different in March than it will in October.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. We haven't talked about the defensemen. The big talking point I would say coming out of the Kings today is Cal Clegg is on waivers. And I don't know, I think we all, on at least at Hockey Royalty, are Cal Clegg fans and think he should be in strong consideration for the roster. Not to say he still isn't, but when you bring in Alex Edler and you already have Anderson, Mata, and Bjornfit, that's not that surprising that he's the one that's going to get waived and sent down. And they hope he clears, but a little, I guess I'll say disappointing, but again, not that shocking. But we'll see what happens. I mean, this is the second time in a few months that they left him exposed for Seattle. And we'll see if anybody bites on it this time.
Yeah, and they have to see a lot out of him, a team that would want to claim him, to have them on their roster, right? That you can't claim somebody and send them down to your minor league team. Mm-hmm. So they have to see enough from him to want to keep him up there. And he only played a few games last year in the NHL. He only played, he played in the Ontario last year and only a couple games for preseason this year. So he said his game is developed. He looked a lot bigger on the ice. I thought he put on some weight, but who knows? I mean, I think, like I mentioned in the last one, I think we both mentioned, his versatility makes him the perfect 7th D guy on this team to play right or left side in case somebody needs a break. And so I think it's only a matter of time until they trade Mata away, but you're not going to put him on in the A with his salary because that doesn't make any sense.
Sure. And that's why with the moves that they decided to make today, it's not very surprising, but I just, you wonder if something comes up or somebody, maybe that they get surprised and somebody claims him and takes him. Who knows? I mean, you could have teams that are, because Clegg could be one of two things. He's still young enough to where if you have a team that's kind of going through a rebuild, like whether you're Detroit or Arizona or Buffalo, that could use a nice young defenseman who's got a sprinkle of NHL experience and give him an extended look on the cheap. Why not? Or you could be a team that, I don't know, think of off the top of my head, like the Boston Bruins, who, they've had some issues on the blue line with some injuries and finding guys and replacing some guys that have gone. A depth guy like Kale Clegg could fit in perfectly over there. And again, this is a pure speculation. And I frankly kind of think he's going to clear because there's a lot of teams going through roster shifting and juggling of rosters and contracts. So it's by no means any sort of guarantee that he clears, but it's, a mild risk, right? I suppose you could say.
Here's a question for you. I know we talked about from a contract standpoint that it might be better to send Bjornfot down to not because he's eligible to go through and keep Clegg up there until they find out what to do with Mata. Obviously that didn't happen. And we all know that people can make strides from one year to another. And with him being young, like he's entering his 20s now, and he's Like, do you think that he just made a big enough stride to separate that gap farther from Clegg, or do you think he earned the respect of T-Mac last year by playing all those games in heavy minutes?
I it's maybe a little of both, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's more the latter, that he's got just that little bit more NHL experience. Again, I'm not saying I subscribe to that necessarily because, and I've said before, I'm a Bjornfot guy. I still think there's a player there. But if you look at the numbers that he's had with Roy from a possession standpoint and an expected goal standpoint, small sample, but it hasn't been good. So that's not to say Clegg would be automatically better, but if something isn't working, maybe try to maybe change it. But it certainly seems that they look like they're going to go with that Bjornfot Roy to start. But which I don't hate that. It's just, it's not something. Bjornfot hasn't been overly impressive yet. And that pair hasn't necessarily lit the world on fire. So I thought there could be an opening there for something, and, Clegg being one of the guys. But again, if they're getting the chance to see, how that's played out and how Bjornfot's looked here in camp, and if they like what they see and he's the guy, and I suspect that he's going to be the opening night left defenseman too.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit of both as well. And you look at it as far as his experience there, and maybe there was definitely some moments where he was playing out of his depth last year. And, that was his first full season too. And you're going to make strides, hopefully, from year 1 to year 2. And, with your full team there, you're more time with your D partner and see how that works. And so I think they're going to give it a shot, like you said, to start the season, and maybe they mix it up. As the season goes along, maybe, he has that first round acumen. I know draft capital doesn't really mean anything once you're on the ice because it's whoever's the best player at this moment. But, you would hope that eventually he becomes a better player than Mikey Anderson and pushes for that LD1 spot for the time being.
Yeah, I like I said, I still think there's a player there. I don't want to be overly down on him. It hasn't quite been there yet. But hopefully this will be more of a step forward for him. And I'm trying to see, I wanted to get a quick look here. Because pretty much every King had a great game against, even though they lost 4-0. I just wanted to get a quick glance at, I'm on Natural Stat Trick just to see. And yeah, he had a very impressive, Bjornfot did, set over 17 and a half minutes, or almost 18 minutes, and dominant possession numbers. Again, I know everybody did that game, but it's good to see. So, perhaps there is that next step in his development that he's taken.
Which is going to be nice. And I think, after he gets more settled in on the defensive part of his game, which is his strong suit, we might see a little bit more offensive flurry come from it. Like when you feel more comfortable and the game is coming to you at a reactionary standpoint and you're not having to think out there and do all that kind of stuff, then your offensive game can start to flow and you're not, worried about getting beat or where do I need to be, and creating chemistry with your partner. Now that he's played with Roy pretty much a full year.
Yep.
That should be there. And, the offensive part of their game should be a little bit more apparent for both of them.
Yeah. And hopefully that's the case.
So did you see anything? Do you want to bring up anything else from those games?
I would say the thing that I loved was, you can definitely see a change. Like they were very, very aggressive and up and at it and getting after it. In terms of just their style of play. The defensemen were active. The defensemen were getting up through the neutral zone. The defensemen were jumping up into the play. And I'm a big, big proponent of that. I think you got to you help keep the jump, keep the pressure on the other team. And I'm all about having active defensemen, keep pucks in the offensive zone. And I thought they've really, you can see a noticeable difference in that. Now I do wonder how that style plays, and again, we'll see how the defense shakes out. Because I don't think you're going to see situations where Olli Maatta and Alex Edler are both in the lineup at the same time very often. But if you do, can the Kings run that way with those two guys? Because because that's not necessarily their game at this point of run and gun and jumping up into the play. I know Edler did it a bit on Thursday night, but I think it's a lot to ask of him at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. It just depends on how he's utilized, right? So you saw it from multiple other podcasts when they talk about Edler and everything like that, saying that he just got burnt out with the amount of minutes that he's playing. He's not going to be asked to play 22-something minutes a night. He's just not. So his legs are going to be more fresh. He's probably not going to play back-to-backs. He might not even play with one day off. Like he might just play, if there's 2 games with a day in between, he might get 2 days rest just to save his legs and save it and, keep that offensive ability alive. So that way he can do what he's good at, because he is an offensive defense or has offensive skill, when he's active, from the motor standpoint, and I think with him having less minutes, keep those legs fresh, and which keeps his skill set alive to contribute more offensively, because we need it. I mean, we were bottom in almost every single offensive category last year besides power play for most of the season. We ended up finishing 18th, which isn't great, but we were top 10 for 3/4 of the season. That's how we were only getting our goals. And so I think you're going to see a nice little addition from the defenseman. And in order for the Kings to make the playoffs, I think you're going to need to see, 25 points from Walker and stuff like that to kind of get those guys, moving upwards.
Yeah, there's no question. And I know, like, a lot of times we talk about how,
or even Walker's who insert and then any other defenseman, but he just can't be Dowdy. Just can't be Dowdy, is what I'm saying. Yeah,
exactly. And I was just going to say, I mean, we talk so often how poor the Kings have been at 5-on-5 scoring, and we always harp on the forwards, and I'm very guilty of it. But it's the defenseman too, and like you said, he can't just be Drew Doughty that's leading the rush, because he's not the same necessarily Drew Doughty that he was even, a few years back. Like, I know he's coming off a bounce back year, but remember, that's a bounce back year. He had a couple of years where it was a struggle. So this is not a guarantee that Drew Doughty is like this, 50 point defenseman anymore. I mean, if he does it, great. But I think we do have to have a little bit of caution there, that there's not a guarantee that's always going to be the case. Now, maybe with this kind of adjusted style of play, and they're being more aggressive again, and he's going to be willing to go in and jump. Okay, so now maybe we do see some more offense from him. But let's not forget and just take for granted that, Drew Doughty's, he's back to being the Drew Doughty he was 5, 6, 7 years ago, because it's the same thing we talked about with Dustin Brown. Is, yes, he's coming off a great year, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen again. All of these guys are a little bit older, and Doughty has had some spurts in his career where it hasn't been great. So I just don't want to bank on that. So you do need depth and some scoring from the rest of the defensemen too. And even if Alex Edler can chip in on that, whether it's in that PP2 role, or even if his skating is going to be what it is, you can clearly see, and man, he made some very just kind of soft under the radar plays in the D zone to help start the breakout and the transition that were awesome. Like, you see, there's too many times you see defensemen that'll just wrap it or hammer it up the boards or go off the glass. He can still calmly grab it. He waits that extra half second, and he'll make a soft kind of a 6-foot pass to his low centerman, who can then turn and go up and out. And that just keeps things going, and it keeps possession. It doesn't give it away, and it just gives the Kings an opportunity to shift to offense. So even little things like that, Alex Edler, that's what he can add.
Yeah, I mean, I think Doughty is probably the most motivated Doughty we've seen.
Sure.
Based on his interviews, he seemed more mature. I know he's always been like a funny guy and likes to give direct answers and everything like that. But he seems a little bit more like focused, like leadership focused wise. And, saying that he admitted before, he's like, I just was so talented. I never really worked out when I was younger. And now that I'm older, I'm taking a lot more care of my body. And I think having daughters now and like being a father has kind of changed his mentality of approaching, his lifestyle. And I think that the fact that he's constantly been knocked on the national level for, skipping over him for Team Canada, hit the odds for him to make to get the Norris Trophy. I think he kind of takes that personally and wants to use it as fuel for the fire. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see 60-point Doughty this year, like we did in 2017-18, and have him dominate. Just because, like I said with Bjornfoot, Mikey Anderson should grow a little bit as far as experience and calmness. Maybe not his skill level, because I think there's a ceiling for every athlete, but the calmness and like the game is going to seem slower to him now that he's had more experience, and that might allow Doughty to join the rush and be more offensively gifted. Like he hasn't been able to in the past, because maybe he's been worried about the defensive responsibilities.
So that's probably the one thing I'll hang my hat on for Doughty is this a bit more up tempo and aggressive style of play that the Kings are going to go with. I think that makes me a little bit more bullish on his potential offensive production and continuing kind of what he was doing from last year. Because I do think, if I'm not, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think a lot of his production last year did come with the man advantage. So it's not as if he was, from a production standpoint, great at 5-on-5. And like I said, I'll have to double check that. I could be wrong, but so there's still improvement there's still more that is needed from Doughty at 5-on-5.
Yeah, I feel you there. I want to talk about, and it's a kind of a minor point, but we might need him this year, is Garrett Sparks. I thought played really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's got the mane underneath the helmet, poking out the back. I like it. And he looked good. Like, he looked good in there. And like, it kind of gave me confidence that if one of the goalies goes down and he needs to start 5 or 6 games this year, that I would not be too worried about him being in the net.
Completely agree. And there was some points in that Vegas game, the first one, where despite the fact that the Kings controlled the game, they needed some big saves early. It was still, Lemieux scored early, so it was 1-0 Los Angeles for a bit. But, it very well could have been a tie game, and Vegas had chances early on that Garrett Sparks was huge in. So, and I think it's a great point you make, because, you never know. And Quick's had injury issues. So just to be able to, call on a guy that you can trust to slot in and, be a backup goalie or spot start here and there as needed. That's all you're asking. And, not to go too crazy off of one game, but I thought he looked really, really good. Agreed.
We talked about the goalie issues for the Reign. He's definitely going to help out there. I don't know about him from a leadership standpoint, because, we don't know yet. But I'm sure he'll be a good guy to have in the room for Matty V and the Ontario Reign there. So I think that's all we got for the Kings. So, let's get our bags packed, pack a little extra cookies in there, because we're off to camp, boys. Tomorrow, Ontario Reign start camp. Let me just kind of go down the list of players who have been sent. So people who have been put on waivers that could get picked up by other teams are Braden Burke, Cale Clegg, Martin Firk, Jacob Murvari, Garrett Sparks, TJ Tynan.
Yes.
Okay. Brett Kemp has been released from his ATO and will report to the Ontario Reign. And then you have Jacob Doty, Cameron Gauntz, Adam Johnson, John Lethemon, Nikita Pavlichev, and Brett Sutter have been released from their PTOs and report to the Ontario Reign as well. So the prospects that were waiver exempt and have been loaned to the Reign are Lucas Parikh, Jared Anderson-Dolan, Aiden Dudas, Sean Dursey, Samuel Fagemo, Helgi Grans, Jacob Bingham, Arthur Kaliev, Marcus Phillips, Rasmus Kupari, Tyler Madden, Johan Sodergran, Jordan Spence, Alice Turcotte, and Matty V, the goalie. So not anything too surprising from my standpoint. Was there any names there that you thought was surprising that you thought might have stuck around in camp longer?
I guess you could say the way Fagemo's summer has gone, not even just the training camp, but he's had a really good summer overall. I thought maybe you could see him or Kaliev, but I'm not too shocked at anybody else. We kind of touched on Clegg a little bit already, that as much as we all think he should be, we get the number standpoint, but from a forward from the forward side of things, I'm not that surprised. Are you surprised? Let me ask you, because I know Jared Anderson-Dolan, I had talked about early in the summer. I made it because I did an article making the case for Blake Lizotte as fourth line center instead of Jared Anderson-Dolan. But I think a lot of people just fully expected Dolan's going to, start with the Kings. And he still could. Just to be clear, anybody that we just mentioned could still start the season with the Kings, right? That's still a possibility, but just for conversation purposes.
Yeah,
so are you surprised?
Trades, all that good stuff.
Sure. So is there anybody? I thought maybe for me, I was a little surprised at Anderson-Dolan just because I didn't think they would actually go that route. I actually kind of figured he would be with the Kings and with the big club for the duration. I was a little surprised to see that. Were you?
Yeah, a little bit. But then you realize, what is Blake Lizotte or insert other forward here going to help Ontario with? You're going to have them play third, fourth line minutes because you want your prospects to play, right? So, and he is waiver exempt, right? He's not eligible for somebody to pick him up. So I think they look at it like, okay, who's better right now, Quinton Byfield or Anderson-Dolan? Or who do we want to see more from? And obviously they picked Quinton. And then you're like, okay, well, Lizotte can play there. Elias Anderson can play center, and we can move somebody else to wing if somebody else gets hurt. And so I expect Anderson-Dolan to be up on the team by the end of the year. But there's also what we thought with the mix of contracts and talent that he might be eligible there. I think where fans, including me, got excited is that we've been so starved for offense. And when he came up and gave us a jolt, that kind of stuck with me all season, mentally stuck with me all season, because Lizotte's been there a while. And as much as I like Lizotte, from a defensive standpoint and, a lot of his metrics, he's not a goal scorer in the National Hockey League. He was in college and everything like that, but in the National Hockey League, he's not. And so then you're like, okay, Anderson-Dolan can be, and he can also do the defensive stuff. And so, and is he going to be our Trevor Lewis of the future, where you see some offensive skill, he's good defensively, and, he does all the things necessary for a team to win and has good leadership ability. That's Jared Anderson-Dolan in a nutshell for me. So I think eventually he'll get there. I don't think it's surprising, because if you pick him instead, then you have to put somebody else on waivers, and then you're just clogging up the A with people who, are taking up spots for prospects down there too, because it's super important.
And I'm curious to see, so assuming he starts in Ontario, where he starts, and where he plays. That's a roster that, as we kind of unpack it here, we have there's the likes of Turcotte, Kupari, and TJ Tynan, who are all centermen. Do they play Anderson-Dolan as a center? Do they play him on the wing? Does he play in the top six in Ontario? Does he play on a third line? How that all shakes out, I think, is going to be very interesting. Tyler Madden's another one who can play the middle. So I'm interested to see, and maybe we'll get a little bit of a look at it when rain camp starts on Sunday, as to how these cards start to fall, because there's still a lot of centers in Ontario, and who is going to be kind of shifted to wing. And their first preseason game is Thursday the 7th. So that's really where we'll get a clue, at least, as to how some things could look from a lineup standpoint. But a lot of ways they could go. I mean, because and obviously, as you had mentioned, all the names, the one that you didn't mention was Byfield. He is still in the Kings camp right now. But you have from Turcotte, Kupari, those are both potential first-line centers. TJ Tynan is a potential top six centerman. Obviously, Anderson-Dolan. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the Reign roster now how that shuffles.
Do you think that with the fact that Kupari played wing in the preseason game indicates what they think of him, or what they wanted for him to do at that level? Because then he played right wing, and so you could, and they've pretty much kept Turcotte and Kaliyev together most of the rookie tournament and in Ontario last year. So you could see a first lineup, Turcotte at center, Kaliyev at left wing, and then and Kupari at right, or for some reason they like to play off wing up at the big club, so maybe they switch them around and have them. But maybe Kapari gets more wing time, then you have Jared Anderson-Dolan as the 2C with Fagemo and Madden, and Tynan as the 3rd C and Brett Sutter as the 4.
Yeah, and that's entirely how that could shake out. And that I don't know. I mean, part of me, I really like that Kapari Fagemo. I kind of would like to see them play together, but I just don't know how that happens if, to your question, Kapari stays on the wing. And I think we talked about this on the last pod, was if he is a center, I think it's with a different organization. So I do think he's going to be a winger, and his path through into Los Angeles is on the wing. So them playing him on the wing with Byfield maybe is a clue, and we'll see what Ontario does if they have him start on the wing. But I think that's, at least in Los Angeles, that's probably his most likely path, is on the wing.
Yeah, I think you just look at it, and it might come down to something minute. All these guys are super skilled. It might come to how well they perform in the dot. The center has more defensive responsibility, so who's a better two-way guy might get the nod there and allow the more offensive forward or offensive-minded forwards, move to the outside. It just going to see what they think. And I think, to be honest, they're going to scramble these guys around a little bit until, some of this stuff starts getting solidified. Like the only one that I think is solidified at center is Byfield, and everybody else that we've drafted could migrate wherever. And they obviously see Velarde as a center right now. I mean, he played center both games. I don't have the numbers in front of me from the dot, but I know that's where he struggled last year. So I don't, that should be a big thing to focus on when the season starts, is how well he goes from inside the circle. Because we definitely need that to push the offense, but it's definitely something to take a look at on the Reign. And I like the lines there, and I think you're going to see some good talent out there. And then the wild card is going to be Akil Thomas in November.
Yeah.
Comes back too.
Yeah, that exactly. And we haven't mentioned Aiden Dudas yet, who I think has I think he won some fans over watching some of the rookie camp and some of the games that he had played in. He definitely provides a spark. There's no question about that. So I count, by my count, I have 16 forwards in Ontario. So that's still a lot of bodies. So there's still going to be some trimming that's done, and that doesn't even count anybody that could be coming down from Los Angeles still, because they've got 34 guys at camp that they've gone down to. So they've still got a number of cuts to make. So there's still a lot to get shaken out here, which we knew and has been the case for a while. So how this all comes about is going to be interesting. I would love to see, like I said, I'd like to see Kapari start on the wing. I'd also like to see Turcotte start on the wing, because again, similar to Kapari, I think that's probably his path to Los Angeles. But if Byfield starts in Los Angeles, somebody's got to play first line center in Ontario, and it's probably going to be Turcotte or Kapari.
Yeah, I think you're going to see they kind of move around based on who's there. If they do decide to send Byfield down, then somebody will move over.
Yeah.
And I think in the next level, you're going to see a lot of guys that can play both ways. Until things really get hammered out and somebody goes and grabs the spot. If
it's funny, I see this all the time, like, because I coach a varsity high school team here in Rochester. So everybody's a center on their travel team. Everybody's a center, but not everybody can play center. I know it's high school hockey versus the pros, but it's the same idea. Like, the higher level you get, the better players generally are centers. And like, at least on their youth teams, right, as they're growing and getting older and whatnot. So it's you run into the same type of thing as you get to that highest level. At some point, something's going to have to give, because not everybody can play center. There's only so many spots. So it's the same idea here, where all these guys have been the play driving guy on their team for years, whether it's coming up through the ranks and growing or whatever it is. And if they get to this highest level, all those other guys are doing the same thing. So it's like, okay, we have to find who can play the wing and who can who can't, because not everybody can make the shift. But it's funny that it happens. It's not an uncommon thing.
I think it's something that you see in every sport. I mean, baseball, I played shortstop until I was 10. And then you get the most athletic people usually stay at short, and then the other people move elsewhere. And then you have guys that are gifted at throwing the baseball, get tried out at pitching first. And then it just kind of feels it out. And then as you funnel more and more athletes as you go up the ranks, all those guys played shortstop at one point because they were all the most athletic guys on their team. And they all get moved. And then, then puberty hits and some guys go to 6'4", some guys don't. And then they get thrown to first base or, however it goes. And I remember in youth basketball, I mean, I'm definitely not a great ball handler now, but I played point guard and shooting guard because I was the only one that could shoot threes. And I was the only one that could take the ball up the court without you feeling that somebody would take it from you. I was the tallest guy on the team playing shooting guard because of your athletic ability. And that's just kind of how it is in hockey too. Like everybody is going to play center if you're the best player. And then when you funnel all the best players into each other, they're going to, they're
exactly.
going to. So
yeah, I get a chuckle of that.
It's going to be interesting because we do got 3 more preseason games for the Kings. Opening night's October 14th. I'm sure Rob Blake's looking at all the other players that were sent down on waivers, roster construction for all the other teams, and seeing if there might be a fit for Amada or might be a fit for a Wagner or might be a fit for somebody like that to not take up a roster spot and get any sort of pick that you can, because it seemed like their strategy, like we talked about, was to package those picks to move up in the draft constantly. And I have a feeling they're going to do that again next year because, like they said, there's only so many contracts that we can have. And so drafting 7 guys isn't going to help us. So
at some point you do so much building and you acquire so many draft picks during your rebuild, the early part of your rebuild, that as you get toward the later part of it, like you got to get going, you got to speed up the process a little bit. So you try to grab more, quality versus quantity. Whereas in the beginning of the rebuild, you're trying to stockpile the cupboard, and the Kings are very well stocked there. So now it's just about finding that, not as many, but getting the high quality. But to your point, we'll see. I actually have not hated Brendan Lemieux's game in camp, which I was a little surprised at myself because I don't know. I don't necessarily see a fit, but I thought he's looked okay so far. So I'll be wondering. He brings that little different element that the Kings really nobody else on the team has. So if how much they value that and if they want to keep that around, that would be interesting to see too.
Yeah, I mean, from every account when he got traded last season, a lot of the fans were mad that he got traded just because he's kind of that that scrappy fan favorite type guys. Like a Dwight King or a Clifford, that kind of player, where like the fans really like his game, like the way he brings himself to the rink every day. And that was his first time really getting traded as a pro. I think he really liked New York, and maybe it was just coming to a team that really wasn't competing. And at the end of the season, and he only got a certain amount of games, he really didn't get his feet wet consistently. Yeah, maybe it's just he needed a summer to acclimate, and he's going to bring something different this summer around.
Yeah, we'll see. Because I don't know that he's a guy I would see in the lineup on a consistent basis. But again, if they value that kind of element that he brings to the game on a once a week basis or once every other week basis, then maybe there's something there. I don't know. I would suspect it's got to be at this point almost for that extra forward or extra if they carry 2 extra forwards. You're looking at Lizotte, Wagner, Lemieux as 2 of those guys.
Yeah.
If assuming Byfield, maybe if they do decide to keep Byfield on the team, then you're looking at probably 2 of those guys. And so we'll see which one is going to be the odd man out.
Yeah. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit and let's go to the defenseman of the Ontario Reign. Now we saw it a little bit. We saw it a little bit in the rookie faceoff. We mentioned it in our season preview that we had a lot of right-handed defensemen, and some of them were going to have to play on their offside. And we saw that with Jordan Spence and Helge Grans. They both played together. We thought that might be a third line pairing for the team this year. How did that look to you in the rookie face-off? I know that we were both interested in see, Helgi Grans play and Jordan Spence play, and they both had their moments so far in camp. Has the stock risen for you with those guys?
Spence, yes, it has. I had, and I say it because in my player preview for him, I just wanted to see how his skating adapts at this level. And so the rookie now, it's still the rookie camp. So I want to see it now in rain camp, and they do a preseason game next week. But I was very impressed. He was a great skater, frankly, in camp. So I was very impressed with that. Him playing the offside was really good to see too. And I'm going to say stock's down on Helgi Grans for me. I'd say just it's level, right? I don't know if it's not bullish or bearish, whatever. Neutral is that? I'm not big into the stock market necessarily. Yeah. So
T-Rex kills them both. So whatever stock you want to go there.
So, but I thought he's a raw talent. And in my preview, I'd reached out and I talked a bit with Sixten Funquist, and that's exactly the word he used too. Is he's a raw talent, so you're going to have to deal with some ups and downs, and some, there's going to be some growing pains and some progression there with Helgi Grans, and that's okay. He's still very, very young, and this will be his first go through here in North America and at the AHL level. So that's probably to be expected. So I thought at times he looked exactly what I thought he could be. I look at Helgi Grans and all the video I've watched and talking to Sixten. He's not a guy like Jordan Spence could lead a rush. He can get the puck, and he's the type of skater that, if his skating improves the way it looks like it's going to, that he can lead the rush and kind of go end to end, quote unquote, if you will. I don't know that Helgi Grans is ever going to be that guy, but Helgi Grans will make the first pass and he'll join the rush as it's going, because he's got great vision and can see and read plays. So that's how I see it. And he showed spurts of that in the rookie faceoff, but he also showed spurts of, under pressure, a little heavy in his feet. And so he struggled a bit in kind of his transition, but again, it's to be expected. He's a very raw talent. But I liked the pairing. It was fun to watch those two when they were paired together. So if that is what Ontario goes with, that should be a really exciting pair to watch. But I would say I'm as is and neutral on Helgi Grans. Excited to see him, but stock definitely up from what I saw at Jordan Spence.
Yeah, I got stock up for both, and I think the only qualm that I have with Helgi is it might be with the same for a lot of European skaters, is adjusting to the smaller rink. And so, when you're a defenseman, the gap control is a big thing. Yep. You're going into the corners and you have your back turn. Skaters get up on you a lot quicker. And so, those types of things are going to be the adjustment for him. But I really liked the fact that he wasn't afraid to take charge and shoot the puck in the rookie face-off, made a lot of good first passes. And so, I guess it's a slight arrow up, but it's like confirmed what I thought that he could be. And it's just kind of seeing it a little bit there. I really liked, but from Jordan Spence, having what should have been 2 goals. I know one got called back because the tip was too high or anything like that, but he's not afraid to shoot the puck either. And he seems to find the holes. Being a defenseman, you have all those bodies in front, and sometimes it's hard to find the holes to get it even to the goalie, let alone in the goal. And he seems to do that on a routine basis. Not only in the World Junior Tournament, where he was in the exact right spot in the slot and buried that puck, and then he's whistled a couple of them through ping-ponging through some defenders all the way to the goalie, and has got some scoring opportunities. So I really have enjoyed that. And like we've said, the big knock on the big club is that we don't get scoring from our defensemen. And so seeing both Helgi not afraid to shoot and Jordan Spence being able to score, I think it kind of brings that. And then you're obviously getting Brandt Clark and Brock Faber coming up in the next couple years as well. I think you're going to see quite a few offensive ability defensemen breaking the Kings roster in the next 2 or 3 years, which is kind of exciting.
And I got a preview coming. It'll be probably within the next few days here on Phillips, who I think he just totally flies, and he did for me too, under the radar a bit. But there's skill here. There's a skill player who in the offensive zone, not at all afraid to shoot the puck. He's got good lateral movement. He's shifty. So I don't know where the ceiling is for him or anything like that. But man, he's another one that you watch him play, and if he's paired with Jersey to start the season, that's going to be a heck of a pairing in Ontario. That he's got offensive ability. There's no question about it. And I think he took him a bit to adapt to the pro level. He spent a lot of years. He spent parts of 5 seasons in the OHL, which is, it's a long time. So it's taken him a little bit to develop and to adjust his game a bit to the American Hockey League in Phillips. But he's got some offensive ability. I don't know that he'll ever be one that's going to be consistent in the NHL, but he's a solid AHL defenseman.
He's one of those players that I think, like, if he was a part of a trade, like at the deadline for maybe a rental, on a losing team, and they brought him over, that he might get a shot at, the 7th D and later on in the season or maybe next year. Like, he might be a sneaky piece that with maybe in a new environment and he doesn't have the log jam ahead of him, could maybe get, a year or two of worth in that level as a rotational D-man.
Like, you could see that bottom pair, but maybe PP2 type of just opportunity, and see if that works for him. But there's that type of ability there. There is. But just it's taken him a while to get to this point. And then, as you just said, the logjam of defensemen that I don't know if there's a long future in Los Angeles, but he's somebody else on the left side that at least in Ontario, hey, it's going to be it's a good defenseman to have for the Reign, that's for sure.
It just seems like there's been quite a good amount of jumps by multiple players. Obviously, Sean Jersey looked like a man amongst boys for the defenseman in the rookie faceoff. And then having another year as a pro underneath his belt with him and maybe Murari as the first pair, or him and Clegg. I don't know how they might do that. Or like you said, him and Phillips. There's a lot of options for him, but I think that first pair is going to be a juggernaut this year for the Reign, which is what we needed.
Yeah, if you look at the potential, like the way I would like to see it, if they go Phillips Jersey, we talked about Spence and Grons maybe being that third pair. If Clegg, who can play both left and right, if Moverari Clegg is an intriguing second pair. Now, I don't know. Moverari is a guy, I've raved about him on this pod before, and I don't want to get too carried away, but he came over last year and in 25 games, 26 games, had 15 points as a defenseman. Not known for that. He's known for being, the hockey IQ, not necessarily like too defensive defenseman, but certainly not known for his offense. But if he's that smart, which is why he was drafted, and he can make that first pass, and he jumps and he knows when to jump up into plays, and you watch his movement in the offensive zone. He got a little bit of power play last season in Ontario. So it's not nothing, his offensive ability. I mean, I'm not expecting necessarily that type of point production, but if he can be that type of play, like in transition, that play driver, make that first pass and be a guy that can be a playmaker from the back end, especially with Clegg, if say he partners with Clegg, he's an intriguing defenseman. Again, logjam, maybe he's a trade piece, whatever. But for right now, for Ontario, I'd love to see Moverari get a look as lefty too. The one guy I haven't mentioned here is Austin Strand. I'm not sure where he fits. Maybe with that.
Well, he hasn't been sent down yet, so maybe he stays up.
True. No, that's very true. Very true. Good call.
So, I mean, right now, based on who's been cut, I like the D pairs. You're looking at, Jersey off very offensive. I misread that. I
thought the Strand was gone. Yep, you're right.
So you're looking at Jersey very offensive minded, possibly with Phillips, who has some offensive ability. You have Clegg very offensive minded with Mufrari with some offensive ability, and you have Strand offensive minded with Grons with some offensive ability. So it's going to be interesting to how they push that. And then, I know Clegg and McGuire will probably start as D pair 2 if Strand stays up, but then you have two lefties, and two righties. And so maybe Jordan Spence earns a spot, gets bumped up, or Granz earns a spot and moves up, and maybe they see, how the chemistry works and everything like that. But the D pairs should be a lot better this year, and we shouldn't be in games that are 7-8 or 6-5 or that type of. We should be able to close out some games a little bit.
I think that's the biggest jump the organization has probably made over the last couple of years. Is they've talked about how deep the forwards are, but with the defensemen, there's just not been talk of a lot of these guys. But as now you look at the NHL level with Bjorn Foote and Mikey Anderson, and for now Strand is there, and then at the AHL level with the likes of Dursey, Cale Clegg. We'll see what Moverari brings in his second full year. You're getting rookie AHL seasons from pretty high end, somewhat highly touted defensemen in Spence and Helge Granz. And we haven't even mentioned, Brant Clark and Brock Faber. So really, they've done a nice job of kind of rounding out the rest of their prospect with some really good defensemen. And, another guy that we haven't mentioned, he's still in LA camp, but kind of on that bubble is Christian Landon.
Yeah.
And to see where he slots in here. More of a veteran guy at this stage, but he's still a body that is going to be somewhere, and it could be in Ontario.
I just think there has to be some moves coming here, because it just seems you don't want to get so log jammed, because minutes is what's going to help people progress, especially in the AHL. And we don't want, I know injuries happen, so you're going to need, 2 or 3 guys down there to account for that, because you don't want to constantly be bringing up from wherever our ECHL affiliate is going to be this year. I know with Seattle coming in, there's less spots, because they have to get all that kind of stuff. So I don't really know if there's been an official partnership yet. But what I'm thinking is that there's going to be some moves being made, whether it's at the beginning of the season or definitely at the deadline, to get maybe a rental piece, because we all expect the Kings to be in it.
Yeah, no question. And that's, similar to we've talked about all the forwards. Like at some point you may see maybe a Helge Granz, maybe a Jordan Spence, maybe a Brock Faber as a key piece, or one of the key pieces in a big trade acquisition, because something's going to have to give at some point. And that's perhaps something. It's a little looking down the road, but something you could see.
Yeah, I think the decor, like you said, has been polished a little bit, and I think it's because it got its cherry on the top, right? It got its Brant Clark, and so everything funnels down. Yeah. Everything funnels down and everything like that, and then you're not like, okay, is Brock Faber really the crown jewel? Is Helge Granz really the crown jewel? Is Bjorn Foote really the crown jewel? Not really. But you saw Turcotte, Byfield, and Kaliev as the 3 jewels up here, and like everything's already built for the forwards to come in where the funnel is, and you didn't really see that crown jewel piece. And now that we have that, everything else seems to be kind of slotting into place.
Yeah, that's true, because it's a lot of guys that are good depth guys and haven't yet established themselves as, legitimate. Although Mike Anderson's done a nice job so far with Doughty, but he's probably the only one so far that's really firmly established himself as a legitimate top 4 defenseman right now.
And the way our prospects are shaking up, like really, we've only been scratching the surface on who's actually had NHL time so far. So, all that stuff will shake up as you see. Mikey Anderson made a name for himself. He's a 4th round pick. Jordan Spence, 4th round pick. So draft capital is good for projecting the future, but then it all comes down to how they play on the ice and earning those spots. And, I think speaking of earning a spot, we thought that the goalies were a little shaky. We mentioned Garrett Sparks a little bit. Matty V looked really good in that one game that he played, was a last-minute ad for that tournament. So really wasn't prepared to go. And I'm surprised that he got the first game. He didn't even get a chance for him to settle in or anything like that, and played lights out. So, maybe it's just it's a thing of needing more time to develop, like you say, with goalies, and just having that maturity. I know it's one game, so we'll see how it plays. And I just think the goalie room should be better this year with Sparks and Villalta.
I expect it to definitely be better in Ontario, but a lot of that hinges on the potential progression development that Matty Villalta makes. And yeah, he looked really good in that game. And it was a shutout, right? He pitched a shutout, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So yeah, he played very well, and that's great to see. But like you said, it's one game, so we'll see how it goes. But it's such a tough position, man. I mean, there's times you have goalies come out of absolutely nowhere that make noise in the NHL. It's just crazy. Like Kevin Lankinen for Chicago, was it last year? Like, where did he? I don't know. Maybe people knew about him. I didn't know anything about him, and then all of a sudden he's getting the lion's share of time in Chicago. So they can come out of nowhere, and you just, their development is all over the map, and how it goes. So hopefully Matty V is ready to take the next step. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to, or even attempt to project or think that one way or the other, he's either not or he is, because I don't know. But hopefully he is, and he looked good early on so far.
Yeah, it's the only position group that really doesn't have a top guy. There's a lot of guys fighting for that spot now that Cal Peterson has graduated. I was a big proponent of them taking a goalie this time because how deep our prospect pool was. I'm very happy with Brandt Clark. I mean, he was rated at some people as the number 2 or 3 overall prospect in this last draft. So very excited for have a legit offensive defenseman who can take up that scoring mantle and that PP1 mantle, when Doughty ages out. And you see what those kind of guys like Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes do to a power play. It really revolutionizes the scoring. And so I'm very happy about that. But from an organizational standpoint, we don't really have a goalie in the wings that you can depend on. With Quick being gone in a couple of years, I don't have a confidence in any goalie that we have so far to see that next path. Now that's also 2 years of progression and development. And so somebody could take the bull by the horns and grab that spot. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out this year. If Matty Villalta falters, is Ingham or Parikh going to get a shot? How will Ingham and Parikh do in the ECHL teams in their next year of development? And kind of see where that goes. And then will they address that in the draft this year? I don't know if there is a number 1 goalie like there has been the last 2 or 3 seasons with Knight, Askarov, and now there was 2 goalies in this draft. Man, that goalie for Detroit is massive, 6'6". I saw him with the pads on, like practice. I was like, dude, he covers the whole net and he's just sitting down. Like, no wonder he's such a good goalie. Like, no bucks are gonna get in. But will they address that? And that's gonna be something for years to come. And I think it's gonna be addressed a little bit on the team this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if some people start heating up from the minor leagues in the ECHL and Villalta's sputtering a little bit, if they get some nods and they get some chances, and we'll just see how that goes out. I hope not. I hope Matty V has a great season and earns that spot and keeps it all year, but it could be intriguing, especially if, maybe not that he's not playing well, but if somebody gets injured and then, injury usually spreads opportunity, and then you can get some guy to earn a spot.
Yeah. And, though they aren't exactly highly touted right now, Villalta, Ingham, Parikh, it wouldn't in the slightest surprise me if one of them emerges and starts to be a guy that's in contention for an NHL job. But I'm not going to sit here and try to guess which one, because it's a position that I don't feel comfortable guessing at in the slightest. It's a very difficult one to evaluate, especially for me. And it's a difficult one to project out. So, which is kind of why I don't like the idea of taking goalies early, because it's such a difficult position to project out. But that's, I guess, neither here nor there. But I'm cautiously optimistic that one of them, because it's almost as if, Villalta, I think Ryan Sykes had one of the piece doing a goalie preview for the organization, and I think he had noted that Villalta had given up, I think in half his starts, give up 4 goals or more. So yeah, it's obviously not very good, but you know what? I go into this year and it's a brand new year, and with goalies, it could be a totally different year for the kid. So hopefully it is.
Yeah, that 2020 draft class is looking very interesting, and a goalie that we really haven't brought up because he hasn't been signed is Hugo Markkinen. They 4th round pick playing in Finland. it's going to be interesting to see if from now, right now, just get taking a look at that draft class. You have Quentin Byfield, obviously he's looking good. You have Helgi Grans looking good so far. Brock Faber did excellent. You have Casper Simon Tybal with 3 goals this year
What
already.
A draft that is so far.
Yeah, you have Casper Simon Tybal with 3 goals already in Liga. You have Alex Laferriere for the USHL, had I think over 30 points last year. Hugo Markkinen is already playing for Liga in Katera, and Martin Kromiak in the 5th round. We've seen him and his prowess, and then Atu Jamson already has like 5 points for Liga this year, and he's a 7th round pick. So, from top to bottom, it looks like
it's a heck of a draft.
All those guys are trending upwards, which is what you'd like to see for a draft class.
Yeah, and Kromiak just signed an entry-level deal, and he's gotten a lot of buzz with how he looked in camp and the rookie face-off. Yeah, he's been an intriguing one this summer. Obviously, going back to junior, but he's just no doubt his stock is up. That's for sure.
Yeah, he'll go back to junior, and he's going to play with the suspected number 1 overall pick this year, and Shane Wright. So you could see him getting over 50 goals this year for that team. And, he played 2 games with Ontario Reign last year. Could see him get signed at the end brought up at the end of the season, depending on how well Kingston does in the playoffs and how well the Reign do. We might see him in the playoffs, depending on all that stuff shakes up.
Yeah, and again, like I said, for him, and he was a 5th round pick, right? That's stocks up for him. So that's boy, that could be a draft that turns the whole organization. You look at the names you just rattled off there. They're all trending upwards right now.
And that's what you like to see out of a draft class, is just nothing but positive progression, because I think that's what fans want to see. It's like, you want them on your club at all times, but there's been some times with draft picks that you're like, the stock hasn't really matched what we've seen so far, or they haven't been consistent, right? Or you get worried because they're injured, or because like you saw the skill from Velarde, but he was injured, so that gave worrisome. You saw the skill from Turcotte, but he was injured, or whatever have you. But then you saw it in the World Juniors there, and so it's nice to see all those players. And then I'm not going to throw away Ben Meehan. He had a decent year for the USHL, but he was another 5th round pick there. So a lot of good picks, a lot of good drafts back to back. In 2019, you have Turcotte, Bjornfoot, Kaliev, Fagemo, Purdyk, and Jordan Spence are our first 4 rounds. It seems like all those guys are trending upward. Kimnu Sayanen was playing well in Kalpa before he got injured. And Andre Lee might set the record for the tallest individual to ever wear skates.
Yeah, they've done well. There's a reason the Kings system has been among the tops in the league by many scouts and experts over the last few years. You've just rattled off the 1920 drafts that have been fantastic. So, but like we've talked about in the show and the other guys at Hockey Royalty, we got to start to see this now, right? We've got to start to see these guys really pushing, and it's the time is now to take the next kind of step in this rebuild.
Yeah, with over half our contracts being UFAs or RFAs being available to or next year, I mean, there's going to be a lot of roster moving. I don't think we're going to see, AA back on the team. I don't think we see Wagner back on the team, or he already has a contract. I don't think we see Lizotte back on the team or anything like that. So it's going to be interesting to see what goes on and how that progresses. But because you and I are covering the Reign, we get to see all those guys first. Make their way over it and see it in some games for our club. So like you said, the first preseason game is going to be Thursday. If you guys haven't already, buy AHL TV. It's awesome to see both. They have packages for one team, all the teams. So if you want to see the Reign and then maybe your local team, you can buy a package for all of it. If you just want to see the Reign and see the young prospects, then you can buy that. You can buy home-only games, away-only packages, or both home and away. Just that they have it very customizable, and then it's not too expensive for the season. I think it's gonna like $1 a game, which is not bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, we've done so much in talking and writing and whatever about the roster and the logjam and the bodies and how's it all going to shake out. And here we are on October 2nd, and it's obviously still not yet done. but we're getting there. We're very, very close. We're almost there to finally just having some actual regular season game action that we can digest and talk about and see how things shake out.
Yeah, it's always fun talking hockey with you, Joe, but I'd much rather be talking about hockey that we're watching. Actual
it's
games,
all speculation,
and actual games, and we're going to see what prospects are going to really take the biggest step forwards, which prospects are going to be brought up by the end of the season and maybe help the Kings make a push. Which prospects are going to maybe help the Reign win, and get into the playoffs. It's going to be interesting to see who makes the biggest jumps from year to year. Obviously, we've seen, Fagemo make a big jump. Byfield, like you said, is getting better game by game. Turcotte looked like a man possessed in the rookie tournament. And so it's just going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I'm very excited at the way we've been drafting. As The Athletic has pointed out, we are the highest or one of the highest in having, per our draft picks play more games than any other team. So we're picking the right guys to get to our roster. And now it's time to see those high-end jewels like Quentin Byfield, Kaliev, Turcotte, start making real impacts for our team starting this season and into the future.
And it's a unique scenario too. With what's gone on the last couple of years, just kind of worldwide with the pandemic, and everything's been that's thrown a wrench in everything, from player development and these guys getting the chance to play appropriately and all that stuff. So it's been a unique time for everybody, but hopefully we're, knock on wood, able to have a normal season this year, and then moving forward that these guys can just do what they've got to do from a progression standpoint.
Yeah. So it'll be nice. And we're going to start to see some players, progress into the successful pick category. Like we say, over 99 games is a good success point. Over 200 games is a success point. Both Mikey Anderson and Gabriel Velarde should play over the 100-game mark this year, halfway through the season. So that'll be nice to see as a player that had back problems, get that, quote unquote successful mark of a draft pick by playing a certain amount of games in the National Hockey League. So good to see them. He's been playing a lot better, I thought too. We'll see if he, like we mentioned, quells out that stuff in the dot, but that's for a future episode, because if I don't stop us, we ain't going to stop, and it'll be a 2-hour episode. So, check it out, hockeyroyalty.com. We're putting out articles every single day at hockey_royalty or at royalty_pod for all the podcasts and everything like that. Everybody, we are ramping up the YouTube coverage as well. So go subscribe, hit that bell for to see when you can see our faces while we talk if you want. And then we're going to be starting some live shows as well, maybe some post-game, maybe just some Q&A with the fans. So we're getting that started as well. So a lot of things are ramping up with the season, and a lot of things are ramping up with Hockey Royalty. Joe, always a pleasure. I don't want to keep you away from your family this weekend, so I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, my man.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Brandon. You too.
All right.
Always a pleasure.
And as always, go Kings, go.